Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance, where people follow exact orders to spite someone. And in today's episode, we've got people fighting back against rude Karens, college professors, lazy classmates, and one OP shares a story about the time they outsmarted their Karen boss and ruined his career. You won't want to miss these super satisfying stories. So kick back, try not to shake your heads too hard today, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. This happened a while ago, and I thought I'd share. I'm not a professional photographer, but I do have decent equipment and a portfolio, so a lot of friends will hit me up for discounted photo shoots. Now, most of them pay, or at least buy me dinner, but others expect me to do it for free. This was one such case. At the time, I was close with my ex-boyfriend's family, so I was thrilled when his younger sister asked me to come to her engagement photo shoot, until she told me to bring a camera. I did mention to her that I'm doing online school, and I have an exam due that week, so if I do a photo shoot for her, the pictures might not be ready for another week. She was fine with that. Within 2 hours of taking pictures, I end up with 300 plus shots, because she literally wanted the perfect Instagram shot. After the shoot, I thought, whatever, I can go home, study, and slowly work on sorting through the pictures later. They're not paying me, so I wasn't exactly motivated either. Well, that night, I get a text from her and her mom around 11 p.m. They want the pictures edited and uploaded the next morning, so they could be shown off on social media. Now, I tried to explain that I'm studying at the moment, but they weren't having it. The two, being super entitled, then said, "We don't care how you edit it, just make it look nice and send us the pictures. It's not that hard." That's when I thought, fine, cue the malicious compliance. I spent the next few hours or so working on the pictures and editing them really nicely that even I was proud of. And then, I hid Shrek into the background of every single picture. Shrek with his head poking out between the two, Shrek posing happily, you get the gist. Shrek had a very nice time at the photo shoot, evidently. I then uploaded the pictures and sent them off, and nobody noticed the extra guest for weeks. When they found out though, I got my ear chewed out because my ex's sister didn't appreciate her 900 followers on Instagram seeing Shrek grinning between her and her soon-to-be husband. They asked me to edit however I wanted, so I delivered, and Shrek was one of my best clients I've ever had. Oh my goodness, like the fact that nobody noticed for weeks is hilarious, guys. And I only wish OP shared some pictures of the shoot. But don't you just hate that though, when you do something out of the kindness of your own heart and people expect you to bend over backwards for them? Like, I've been there, and it's annoying as heck, and I'm just glad OP took the opportunity to get back at them, right? And this person says, I'm asked to help with electrical needs from friends and family, and my answer is always the same. No problem, but I'm kind of busy right now. I would never charge, but unless it was, oh my goodness, your house is gonna burn down bad, then your fancy switch is gonna wait a couple of months. It kept down the requests. In your case, if something like that happens again, you could say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm super busy and have to put my paying clients first. I mean, they are paying the bills, right? And this person says, I went through the same thing with my mother-in-law. I painted her house, helped her brother make cabinets for her house, did some plumbing and electrical. By the time I got to the electrical, I told my wife, how is it fair that she's paying everyone else? She paid my wife's uncle $800 for the cabinets that I helped with. He left, and guess who had to finish everything? I haven't received so much as a soda. So I left the rest of the electrical unfinished, and guess what? She paid someone to go finish it, which just enraged me more, to be honest. And here's the thing, I wouldn't have wanted to get paid in full. I would have gladly taken 25% of whatever she paid, but to get nothing feels so disrespectful. Long story short, I'm now the bad guy, and I'm completely fine with that. And that's the thing, you do something for someone and suddenly everyone needs something done. The key here is to stand your ground and learn to say no. And I've been in that position before, guys. Like, it took me a long time to be able to do that, but with the more no's you give, it does get easier and easier. And seriously, if somebody values you as a person and values your time, they won't always try to get something for nothing. And speaking of saying no, the next OP tells their classmates no in the best way possible. You'll love this next post. So in high school, I was in a science class that I did very well in. I was the top of the class and I scored nearly 100% on every test and assignment. The teacher then assigns a big group project that would take about a week to complete with a team of 4 students. The groups were randomly assigned, and unfortunately, I was paired up with the 3 kids who were barely passing the class. In class, we were given time to make plans together as a group to divide up the work. It was at this point, my teammates decided to tell me that they weren't going to do any work on the project. I asked why, and they said they knew I really cared about my grade, so they figured that I would do it on my own. These 3 were so lazy. They were banking on the fact that I wouldn't tank my own grade, so they would benefit off my hard work. I was pissed, and I said that was unfair. They then dig in, and they say, too bad, you either do this project yourself, or you can get a 0, and we know you'll do it. So cue malicious compliance. Now, I could have gone to the teacher, and he probably would have sorted this out, but a better idea struck me. I just said, fine, you win, I'll do what you say. They then smiled smugly and thought that was that. But you see, this teacher had a policy that at the end of the semester, your lowest grade, excluding finals, would be taken off your record. So if you forgot to turn in 1 assignment or you did really bad on 1 test, you got a mulligan so it wouldn't ruin your final grade. I had never done poorly on any assignment all year, so I've never needed my mulligan. However, I knew that these idiots all did. If they got a big fat 0 on a crucial assignment, they would probably fail the class. So I did exactly as they instructed. I did no work on the project all week. I just sat on it and bided my time. At the beginning of next week, all the students turned in their assignments, and my team watched as I just sat in my chair unmoving. Finally, one classmate said, "Hey, OP, aren't you gonna turn in the project? It's due." That's when I respond, "Oh, I didn't do the project." Hearing me say that, they were all shocked, and they asked why I didn't do it. That's when I said, "Well, you said to do the work or get a 0. I choose 0. They were all royally pissed, and because of that, they all had to retake the class over the summer. They hated my guts, but honestly, I couldn't have cared less. It was the most satisfying failing grade in my entire life. What a malicious compliance that was, guys, and the fact that OP got not just 1, but 3 people with that compliance is amazing. And the fact that the 3 classmates had to repeat the class over the summer makes it even better, guys. Like, that seriously got me grinning from ear to ear. And you also have to wonder if the group assignment was really random. Like, maybe the teacher was hoping that if everybody could work together that the 3 could raise their grades. And if that's the case, OP's malicious compliance got 4 people in the end, and that deserves a standing ovation. Well frickin' played. And if you enjoyed that story, take a listen to this next one where a professor learns a hard lesson. So I was in a speech class, and it was my last semester, completely online. Our professor assigned us a group speech that we were to record and send to him by the due date. I thought it would be easy enough as he gave us 2 weeks to work on it, and group speeches weren't anything new to me. This project was worth 30% of our grade, so failing this project meant that you would pretty much fail the course. Being proactive, I wanted it to get done early, so we wouldn't have to worry about it. So I immediately post a message to everyone in the group asking when they're free to do a Zoom meeting to discuss the project. No reply for a few days by any of them. I then post again. This time, a little more stern, as it didn't seem that any of them cared enough to even reply at all. I then wait a few more days. At this point, we only had a week left before it's due, so I just divided up the work and I posted what everyone would need to write their portion of the speech about, and gave them a date and time that I would be holding a Zoom meeting for the final recording to send to the professor. Still no reply. It was now the day before the speech was to be recorded and 2 days before the speech was due, and my group members had not made an attempt to contact me in any form at all. So I did the only thing I could think of, and I emailed my professor explaining the situation. But I assume that he wouldn't reply because throughout the entire semester, it would take him over a week to reply to any emails I sent to him. I then did the entire group project on my own, which took me the entire night with no sleep. After I finished writing everyone's speech, it was around the time I'd scheduled the Zoom meeting to record. I joined it out of amusement, knowing nobody in my group would be there. And sure enough, it was empty, so I did the entire speech myself. But the rubric really put emphasis on transitioning to our other group members, including saying their name. So between every section, where it would cut to a different member, I would say something like, "And now, my name will explain the importance of blah blah blah," and then mute my screen briefly, as if to add a cut, and then put on a different hat and continue the speech. I did this for all 6 portions of the speech. I then turned the speech in shortly after, and I filled out the group member roll sheet that was due as well. I just put my name in every box that was supposed to be a different member. A week passes, and I see the teacher graded the project, still not replying to my previous email about the situation, by the way. He gave me a 0, stating it was supposed to be a group project, and me doing it solo meant I did not follow instructions. I was actually infuriated by this, and I knew that emailing him about the grade was as good as useless, so I went straight above him to the board of the college, and I explained to them what happened. They apologized, and they said the situation would be resolved. Within a few hours of me talking to the board, the professor replies to my email 3 times, stating that he was sorry for the miscommunication about the project and that my grade would be corrected. But then he scolds me for going above him, saying that I should have emailed him again and again if I couldn't get in contact with my classmates. He then put the blame on me for not trying harder to reach out to them. The next semester, I saw that he was no longer with the school. My guess is that it was a habit of his to not reply to emails and he got fired for it. Also, his corrected grade was a 70, but I was so mentally exhausted from the situation at that point that I didn't care to fight it anymore. Can't say the professor didn't deserve that, right? And seriously, as a college professor, you'd think that the least you could do is reply to emails. On top of that, him initially giving OP a 0 for carrying the project on their back was ridiculous. I'm just glad OP went above the professor and the guy faced the consequences. And listen, the one thing I've learned from group projects is the only person you can rely on is yourself. Again, kudos to OP for doing the whole project solo, and I hope the classmates failed as well. Okay, so I'm not sure if this is malicious compliance or what, but I wanted to share it with you. I graduated university a few years back, and immediately I start looking for a job in my chosen field, which was marketing. Entry-level roles were hard to find, so when I found a role that was a hybrid of marketing with sales support, I took it. The company I worked for was a medium-sized business which specialized in recruitment, contractor hiring, and headhunting. They also subcontracted work for a recruitment technology provider, which matched up perfectly with one of my other passions, technology. I absolutely loved the role. I got to do all the parts of the marketing and sales lifecycle. I got to work with suppliers, event organizers, clients, staff across the company, meet new people, and do really exciting things. I also had 2 managers, the one who managed the sales team and the one who managed marketing. The marketing manager was a kindred spirit, and the sales manager was old school sales. He was an arrogant and headstrong late 40s man who lived for making deals and boasting about them, shiny-shoed, silver-tongued. I'll call him Dan, and seriously, we were not friends. For about 18 months, things went swimmingly. I would do marketing half the time and then divide the rest of the time between sales support and billable work. Billable was building custom job sites to host the recruitment system front end. It was a steep learning curve, but with the help of some web developer friends, I got pretty familiar with simple site builds. Being tech-aligned meant I was always looking at digital first, bringing the company into the age of social media, website optimization, and multi-channel marketing. The thing is, Dan sneered at such things. He saw digital as a waste of money. However, we were always able to justify the spend on digital by offsetting the billable website work. The marketing manager eventually moved on to bigger and better things. Rather than promote me or hire in a replacement, the company moved the marketing responsibilities to Dan. Now, Dan's changes were immediate and far-reaching. He removed the digital budget. He then required that 50% of my time would be sales support to better enable the sales team. He incorporated the billable work with his own team's revenue. He also rewrote my annual objectives to align purely with sales targets rather than marketing. When I voiced my objections, he took me aside for a quote, friendly chat. He then told me if I didn't like it, I could always leave. Naturally, I went and complained to the departed marketing manager over drinks. After listening sympathetically for 45 minutes, she then holds up a hand and she said, stop. She then shared some life advice. She told me, each job pays you twice. You get your money now, and that's your wage. You also get experience now, and that's how you get paid in the future. So are you still getting paid? Yes. Are you still learning? No. Then figure out how to keep learning or leave. Taking that advice to heart, I just busted my butt the next year. I worked on digital outside of the office hours, and I made friends with the tech provider support and development teams. I went to group meetups, attended conferences, studied for and acquired industry qualifications. I joined the National Marketers and Digital Marketers group. I dug through blogs, articles, emailed people, took every opportunity to cross-skill, upskill, and to learn. I sat with a smile on my face in sales meetings as Dan delegated dumb work to me, so his team of sycophants could make the company's growth figures look spectacular. And spectacular they were, to the point that the company was acquired and Dan betrayed me. You see, the managers have the discretion to assign a pool of shares to high-performing staff. The shares have no real value and they can't be traded, but in the event of a management buyout, they would suddenly have value, and quite a lot of value. Dan felt it appropriate to reward every salesperson in his team with a generous partial of shares. As a support person, I would not be the beneficiary of such kindness. Now, with that said, I had had a verbal agreement with the previous marketing manager that the pool would be shared across the entire team, so I was pretty shocked to discover that I'd been excluded from the pool. I asked Dan about it per the previous agreement, and he said verbatim, well, an actual agreement is only worth the paper it's written on. You don't make any sales, you haven't built the business, so why would you get a cut? You don't get a cut. If you don't like it, he reiterated, you're welcome to leave. And this is exactly what I decided to do, except I didn't tell him. The way the contract handover works in this instance is that all staff cease employment with Company X on one day. The following day, they commence employment with Company Y. Annual leave is paid out and begins to reaccrue at the new employer. Other arrangements, like salaries, long service leave, and length of service, may be transferred to the new employer. About 6 weeks before the handover, Dan passes me my new contract. I waited a week and came back with some enthusiastic queries on the new benefits, which took him 2 weeks to follow up. I quietly registered a domain name and parked it, and then spun up a WordPress instance and started to build a personal blog. 3 weeks away from drop date, and everyone's frantically running around, getting all the deals as close as possible to closing. The employment contracts are the last thing on his mind. So I go back to him and I tell him I have a couple of more things I need to check out, and I'll email them through to him before I sign it. A week passes and I fire off a couple of really complex questions around the transfer of benefits. He obviously forgets about them, and then, the week of the handover, he catches heat from the HR team about the outstanding contract, and he pulls me into a meeting room to berate me about not having signed the new contract. I simply explain that I'm waiting on his feedback of those specific points before I'll commit, that I don't want to be disadvantaged moving into the new role. I then call out the lack of a share option as an example. Clearly frustrated, he drops the words I've been waiting for. He says if the signed contract is not on my desk on Friday, don't even bother coming to the office on Monday. He then paused for dramatic effect, and he reiterated, and he said, "I mean it, you won't have a job." I reply that I completely understand that I'll have everything he needs on his desk by close of business Friday. On Friday afternoon, Dan leaves the office early to attend his normal client networking visits, which typically involves long lunches and a lot of booze. At 4:45 p.m., I save the final set of forecasting and reporting to the share drive. I then send an email to the IT team passing over access to the marketing LastPass account, which contains the global database of usernames and passwords for all digital assets, an Excel workbook containing my reporting macros, and the location of all of my documentation. I then redirect my phone to Dan's desk number. I lock my laptop and leave it on his desk along with my ID card. Over the weekend, I push my personal website live, and I add my contact details to my LinkedIn profile, switching it to actively searching mode. I figure that my holiday pay will cover me for a couple of weeks of downtime before I have to go diving back into the workforce. On Monday, I'm enjoying a long walk in the spring sunshine with my dog. We stop for coffee at a local cafe and my phone begins to ring. It's one of the salespeople at the old company. I ignore it and thoroughly enjoy the freedom of being able to amble through a park without anywhere to be. The phone buzzes another 8 or 10 times by the time I get home. The crap has and truly has hit the windmill. I check my voicemails, ignoring those I know from my previous employer. I return the phone calls from 2 ex-clients to let them know that my contract has ended, and to check in with Dan for work in progress, or to contact the technology provider for support requests. Shortly afterwards, I get a call from a bemused contact who works at the technology provider, who's been fielding support calls that I'd normally handle. He listens with increasing interest as I explain the situation, and then he tells me he'd call me back shortly. 10 minutes later, he's back with the head of product on the line, asking about my lunch preferences. She arranges to meet me at a nearby Thai place. Over a delicious red duck curry, she cheerfully describes the wonders of a career as a contractor. She also mentions the day rates for highly qualified, industry-certified staff, and she mentioned that tech provider were really struggling to find such staff. She then gives me the number of a recruiter. I call the recruiter on the way home. Meanwhile, my collection of voicemails from Dan was growing by the hour, as he came to grips with the problem that he'd generated. At some point in the late afternoon, HR must have clicked to what had happened, and I receive a polite text message from a personal number of the regional HR directory asking if I was available for a quick chat. So I call and I discuss the options presented to me by Dan on Friday, and that I felt I had no option but to follow his instructions. They probed for a bit more information, and it became apparent that they were unaware that Dan had pulled an ultimatum without first engaging HR. They then informed me that to benefit from the sale of my shares, I would need to transfer to the new company and remain in their employment for a full year. When I explained that I had no such share options, there was a full 4-second silence. It then transpires that this too was not communicated to HR. I then mentioned that I would appreciate if Dan could discontinue his voicemails to me, as I found them unprofessional and I had no intent of recommencing employment under his management. We ended the call politely. My new contract for tech provider came through at 11 p.m. that evening, and it was signed and returned the following day. I was deployed to client site that Wednesday. Post-departure, I meet up with one of the old IT guys at a conference 3 months after it all went down. The guy was ecstatic to fill me in on what happened. The first notice that anyone got of it was the service desk, asking who they should route my LastPass account to, and why I was passing it around. One of the techs went looking for me, and they found an empty desk. They then asked around for where I'd moved to, and no one knew. The tech then went to Dan's desk, and they found my laptop with my ID and post-it note taped to it. He put 2 and 2 together, and he went downstairs and checked the access logs. And he realized the last time I'd logged in was Friday. He then locked my account for security purposes, and he went to HR to check if there was a leaver form. HR checks, and there's no leaver form and a big red cross next to employment contract received. So HR calls Dan, who's not in the office. Dan says, no, the contract should be on my desk. It was there on Friday. I'm out on the road at the moment. Give me until lunchtime and I'll sort it out. Obviously thinking that I'm disobeying him, he starts to call me and leave messages, and then he gets progressively agitated as he realizes I'm not coming back. When he gets into the office, he can't find the contract either, so he goes to HR and he explains what's happened. He says that I've been stonewalling them and it's cool, he'll get it sorted, it's between me and him. HR says, no, this is our thing now, and that's when they send me the SMS. Shortly after my phone conversation, the HR walks into a sales meeting and very abruptly pulls Dan out. They disappear into a meeting room where it may only be assumed that Dan was required to spell out exactly what occurred and to address the comments that I made. I suspect he came completely clean at that stage. Dan was subsequently reamed so hard as only HR and senior management can ream a manager who's effed up. He was demoted, decoupled from marketing, and his budget reduced by half, and a new separate marketing function was created. His team were collectively put under review and forced to carry out their own reporting, tracking, and metrics, which lacked the coherence and consistency that I'd been able to deliver. This reduced the capacity of the team. A couple of them left and they missed out on some key deals. In the fallout, they completely dropped the ball on the client website builds. They went to market to try and find a resource who could fulfill these builds, and Dan was astounded to discover that experienced technical marketing staff are both hard to find and expensive to recruit. They were unable to fill the role, and the builds were taken back in-house by the tech provider, who now had an experienced resource to deploy. That happened to be me. Now, I'm pretty sure Dan would have seen the funding arrangements for these, and he would know my day rate, which is substantially higher than his. Much later, as the sales lead, Dan had to bear the displeasure of his superiors for the full 12 months before he could claim his share payout. It would have been a really crappy 12 months for him. He resigned within 2 weeks of the anniversary of the purchase, and the company then enforced a 6-month notice period and another 12-month no-compete clause. For those who don't know what a no-compete clause is, that means he can't work for a competing company or start his own company. So basically, any benefit that he would have received from the share payouts would have been consumed over the 12 months. Unless he switched industries or moved cities. Last time I saw, he was on the job market. As for me, I'm happily living the life of a contractor. I get paid the hours I work, and I work the hours I want. My old marketing manager is now VP of something at a large multinational. I've used her speech several times when giving young, frustrated staff career advice. What a beautiful malicious compliance that was, and well frickin' played OP. And again, a person like OP's boss truly deserves the karma that came his way, and let that be a lesson learned, guys. Like, if you threaten your employees and give them ultimatums, one day they might take it and screw you over. But yeah, the fact that OP's boss betrayed them and screwed them over on company shares, only to have his share payouts be basically worth nothing, as it's probably all going to bills, makes me smile so much, guys. Like, that's karma at its finest. And before we close out today's episode, guys, this one OP shares a malicious compliance on their daughter, which I hope you'll enjoy. So I have to share this with you, as I'm sure your listeners will love it. And here's a little disclaimer. My daughter's a wonderful kid. She's smart, and she's also a smartass. A couple of years ago, my daughter was roughly 8 years old, 2nd or 3rd grade elementary school. She was really into salami pizza. I wouldn't allow more than one per week, obviously. So she got the idea that in France, children get to eat everything they want 7 times a week. This is why they like it. Now, she got it all wrong. The saying goes, they have to try a certain food 7 times before they can decide whether they like it or not. But I understood her wish: salami pizza every day. She had this little malicious grin on her face of, gotcha. I answer with the same grin and I say, okay, you'll get salami pizza the next week. Only salami pizza, nothing else. She was of course hyped, thinking, yay, all the pizza, her favorite frozen types, all of them. Monday morning rolls around and she gets salami pizza for breakfast. Fantastic. Best parent. Monday afternoon, leftover from the morning. Monday evening, time for the second pizza. I make some for the rest of the family too, because everyone enjoys salami pizza. Tuesday morning, guess what's for breakfast? Exactly. My daughter asked for something else, and I remind her of my promise: salami pizza all day, every day for a week. There's a reluctant yay. Tuesday afternoon, she skips the pizza. Tuesday evening, we're having something else while she chews on her pizza. It's not as cool anymore, I guess. I eat her leftover pizza. On Wednesday morning, she sneaks a slice of bread, but I stop her and I heat up a piece of salami pizza. And that's when she breaks down and she asked me to stop. Lesson learned: don't try to outsmart your parents. You might get exactly what you're asking for. Since then, she still loves salami pizza, but once a month is fine, really. Yeah, like all of these malicious compliance stories, sometimes you learn by getting exactly what you ask for. And as a parent, the best way for a child to learn is to let them figure it out. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/malicious compliance. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy, crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/entitled people episode, where psycho Karens think that they rule the world. The stories are freaking wild, so go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.